I'm Dean, I'm the dad.
I'm Laura, I'm the mom.
And I'm Krystlyn, I'm the daughter.
And together we are...
Family Plot!
Yay!
Yay!
Little off.
It was a little off, but I specifically dropped out of the Family Plot thing so that I could play cheery sounds because this is episode 100.
Well, I know it is, but that doesn't mean you get to just leave us in the wind.
Well,
It's like letting two feathers out.
But I've got to use sound effects and stuff.
You said feathers, I thought you were going to say an F word. A different F word, like fart. That would have been
I had to do the sound effects.
You've got to let us know these things.
Before we start podcasting.
See, we've been working with you on this for 100 episodes now. Well, not 100 episodes for me because
100 episodes.
Absolutely. And I've heard her do it. So, anyway.
I've been here every single episode.
Yes, you have, Krysta, and I'm proud of you for that. And I just talked to your Uncle Danny.
Who's been here for a couple episodes as well.
Yep. Okay, well, here we are, episode 100. If you are a new listener, thanks for listening.
Absolutely.
Welcome to our 100th episode. Make sure you listen to other ones if you're interested in this one.
Also, want to thank all the old listeners who've come back. Thank you very much.
If you have been here since day one, thank you very much. We appreciate you.
Also, want to remind y'all that you can help us, by just sending money through to us through things like Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee, but that's really not super important tonight. Also, definitely, though, remember, if you enjoy the show, share it on social media. If you don't enjoy the show, keep that to yourself. That's what we say. So tonight, we here at Family Plot are proud to bring you episode 100. But before we get into the fun and the stuff that we're all going to do, there is something that we've got to talk about. I am not super political with this show, mostly just because I always feel like you don't tune into us for our politics. You know, you tune into us for
we should be about.
However, some things are kind of important, and with the overturning of Roe versus Wade, I just feel like that was a misstep that we as a country should not have taken. And if any of our listeners find themselves in a desperate need to, say, go camping in another state, say like Illinois, where the camping is great, you can reach out to us and we'll help arrange for you to get there so you can camp properly.
Yes.
Or any other state where camping is good, and nobody wants to camp in Texas. California is another great state for camping. Nobody wants to camp in Texas. It's bad. So yeah, if you find yourself in that need, please reach out to us. We may not be able to do anything ourselves, but we have listeners all over the world. We have friends all over the world. We might be able to find you some help. Especially if you're in California. I got friends in California that are, that's where April Victorine is. And you don't want to mess with April Victorine. She's like part Wolverine and part like firebug. Yeah, she'll kill you. And then dance on you and then paint you pretty colors after she's done. She's crazy. But I love her. She's crazy.
We also have Danielle there.
Yeah, Danielle.
Who used to drive us to school.
Yeah, and she's crazy too.
Oh, yeah, she is. I've met her children. I know where they get it from.
forget Marissa Alden.
Oh yeah, I would never. She used to be a wrestler. I wish she still was. I loved her. She's like one of the few I knew who started wrestling, and she of course was a submission specialist. So yeah, like I said, long story short, we have friends. If you need help, reach out. Having said that, and having said that, taking a stand for something we feel is important, we're going to move on from that, and we're going to celebrate this. Actually, this is going to be chilling to some of you. This is part 1 of our 2-week celebration of 100 episodes. Because this week we're going to do something kind of chilling and scary, and next week it'll be a great big party. All we'll do is party. But this week, we're going to chill some of you, because we're going to talk about black-eyed kids.
Ooh!
And that doesn't mean like children that have been punched in the face. These are kids whose eyes are solid cold black. They've been a part of our culture probably since the 90s. Brian Bethel is the guy that gets tagged as the guy who brought the legend. But if you look, it really goes back a lot further. And so we're here tonight. We're going to talk about the legend a little bit. We're certainly going to share some stuff about it. But before we get into all the gritty details about black-eyed children, Krysta has some weird facts.
Krysta.
Hello, everyone. Good to be back to the family plot Krysta corner over here.
I love the family plot Krysta corner.
So do I.
This is in case you are new, this is the corner where we all get together and talk about a thing that is either related to this show or, just for funsies. Today, it's just a funsies fact.
Well, it does have a correlation, kind of, because Disney is a big kids show, big on children. Black-eyed kids are kids. Kids, Disney, kids, Disney. It's kind of a tangential connection, but it had one, just so you know.
Yeah. I see where you get that. But also, some things on Disney aren't all for kids, so let's just keep that in mind.
What, like Tron and the Black Cauldron?
I don't know. I've never watched that. There's a reason why I said not all things on there are for kids.
Oh, you haven't ever watched Black Cauldron?
No.
Black Cauldron's actually...
Watch party. I enjoyed Black Cauldron's very fantasy, kind of D&D-ish.
Yeah, it's kind of Welsh D&D-ish. Yeah.
You'd like it.
Although, I've got to say, it kind of bugged me that, like, one of the chief antagonists or protagonists is a pig. Named Hen Wen, if I remember right.
No, he wasn't an antagonist.
Well, Taran was a pig keeper.
Yeah.
And Hen Wen was the pig.
Yeah, but it was like a side character. Anyway. Okay.
So, I was letting them talk a little bit. Thank you for that. Back to my introduction. There's only a little bit left, so don't worry. It won't be a 15-minute long introduction as long as we keep it short and sweet.
Krysta, just have fun with it. That's all that you're supposed to do. Hi, Apollo. You comfortable, buddy? Okay, good.
For the new listeners, hi, hello. Again, this is the Krysta Corner where we talk about things all Krysta. Weird. And,
You are weird, but we love you anyway.
Just relax a bit before we listen to any chilling or scary facts or scary things from the show. To all listeners, hi, hello, welcome back. Thank you for supporting us through all of this, and I'm sorry you have never heard that intro before. I'm getting used to putting myself into that spot and trying to be in more of a light, I guess. So yeah, let's get just started. Let's just get this started.
Let's get it started in here. Ah!
I love that song. Actually.
Yeah, I don't hate it, and you'd think I would because it's really not my kind of music. But for some reason, it always sticks in my head and kind of makes me happy. Find myself whistling along as well as I can whistle, which isn't really well, but
Yeah, I have this one song that sticks in the back of my head all
But the
the time.
desire is there, and that's the important part, right, babe?
right.
All right. So, fact number 1. Walt Disney did not draw Mickey Mouse. I'm sure Mom knew this. I don't know. But many people believe that Walt Disney himself created and drew the iconic Mickey Mouse. But the original creator and artist went by the name Ubi Iwerks.
Ubi Iwerks. Yeah, he's a famous in the cartoon circles. Iwerks. Yeah, is what they called him.
Ubi and Walt became friends in 1919.
So right around the time of the First World War was ending.
I'm not sure. I don't. Here's one thing about me. If you are new, if you're old or know this about me already, you're probably stalking me. I don't know why. I am really bad at keeping dates in my head, along with continents and states and stuff. I'm bad with geographic stuff, so just putting this out in the Krysta corner here for the 100th episode. I'm kind of bad at that stuff.
Krysta, nobody expects you to be perfect, but you know what? I do know some dates. So when we touch on something that I think is tangential to something else, timeline-wise, I'm going to jump out there and go around this time. And I'm not doing it for any other reason, but for that our listeners can... Yeah, so our listeners can kind of go, oh, okay, like around here. Know where it fits on the timeline. That's all.
No, I'm sure. I was just saying, I'm not great with any geographical or date. I have to write it down on a piece of paper to be able to process it through my head. That's just what I do. Okay.
But yeah, do your facts.
But just say what you needed to say.
No, I remember hearing a story, and maybe your mom, she's the biggest Disney person I know, but I remember hearing a story that, like, when Walt Disney was young, he like found a mouse in his apartment, and that's...
Right, so when he lived in Kansas City, there was a rat.
There was a rat?
I believe it was a rat. It may have been a mouse, but I want to say it was a rat. It may clarify that in your information that you have there. But he lived in kind of a rundown apartment in the city. I believe. Now, I may be totally off, but and he referred to a mouse there or a mouse or a rat, I can't remember for sure which one, there that lived in the walls in the apartment as Mickey, and that's kind of where the idea of Mickey Mouse came out. I'm going to verify that.
I was just saying, that's the story I've heard, but I was going to let her do her facts. Maybe she has a fact on it.
Go ahead.
Well, believe it or not, we're moving on because the passages on these facts are extremely long. Longer than I want to sit here and talk to you guys all episode about.
Oh, I see how it is. I see how you are. You don't want to sit here and talk to your mom and your dad?
I just don't want to extend the...
She doesn't run...
I am sorry. It was a tame mouse, and it lived at his desk at the Lapagram Studio in Kansas City, Missouri.
Ah, okay.
In 1925, Hugh Harman drew some sketches of mice around a photograph of Walt Disney.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Makes sense. All right. Next fact.
Yes. Number 2.
Walt was not the... Ooh, okay. We are starting off bad here. Walt was the original voice of Mickey Mouse. Believe it or not, Mickey Mouse's famous falsetto voice we know and love today was actually that of Walt himself. Walt took great pride in being the original voice in the beginning of 1929, 10 years after the character was created.
Nice try, baby.
It was a good. I thought it was good.
I did. I told him nice try. I wasn't being.
Well, when I take nice try, it's just like, oh, you did it wrong, but nice try.
I know it wasn't perfect. I just, for some reason, that double laugh seems iconic to him in my head. It may not be, but to me it is. So if I was going to really try to do his voice, it'd be something like, haha, thanks, Krysta. You know, something like that. Which isn't great.
It's a decent try, though. I'm not.
I would think more of, oh boy, or something, because that's what I'm used to hearing him saying all the time.
Yeah. I guess in that thing that Lexi watches, he does say "oh boy" a lot. I guess maybe he always has, and I've just never noticed. Blink, blink. I'm lost.
It's okay. We'll go through some more facts and see if we can find anything.
Okay, fact number 3.
We're on fact number 2 still.
Somebody
disrupted me. I don't know who.
I'm sorry.
The falsetto voice we know and love today was actually that of Walt himself. Walt took great pride of being the original voice, beginning in 1929. So that's where we stopped. Now we continue with the short film Carnival Kid, where his only line was "hot dog, hot dog." With the Disney franchise rapidly growing, Walt soon became far too busy to continue playing the icon. So in 1964, he handed the voiceover to Jimmy MacDonald, a veteran Disney musician and actor.
Cool. I imagine Jimmy probably doesn't do it anymore.
Oh no, they've gone through multiple different voice actors, I believe.
Yeah.
People keep passing away.
Or getting to the point, because as you get older, your voice changes, and so some people may not be able to hit that falsetto anymore. That's a pretty high...
What I believe happened to Walt. I think he stopped being able to do that high-pitched, oh, shucks, voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
I can't really do Mickey's voice. I'm terrible.
You know what? You were better than the guy that did Mickey's voice in...
Great.
That did Mickey's voice in Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
I haven't watched that.
You've not... Where have I gone wrong, dear? I have deprived this child.
I'm sure she's actually seen at least bits and pieces of it, because I know I've watched it several times around her. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? You know, Jessica Rabbit, the redhead with the furs and...
The only thing I've seen from that is Jessica Rabbit.
Okay, anyway. So,
Walt's brother, Roy, started as a vacuum salesman. Roy Disney, the man most noted for continuing his brother's legacy following his death, began as a vacuum cleaner salesman, selling door to door to make ends financial meet. Roy had already been living in Los Angeles when Walt moved there. Roy suggested that his brother follow his lead and sell vacuums as well. This is a picture of the two side by side.
Nice. Look at them in their younger days.
Mm-hmm.
Not as cute as you and Blue, but they're still pretty cute.
What is that? What? Oh. It was a silverfish.
Creepy.
One of those big creepy curly toys.
Crawling around
I
on the
hate
floor.
those things.
Well, it's not anymore now, is it?
No, I killed it.
Good job.
Good job, Crystalline.
I know Disney. Which one's in California? Disneyland. I was confused. I'm sorry. I know Disneyland had a thing for a minute that if Walt was on the property, there was a light that was lit. And now they just keep it lit all the time since he passed.
Yeah, and it's on Main Street.
But I have to confess I've never been to either. And here in my 50s, I'd love to go to either, but just, it's...
Financially.
Financially and COVID and stuff. Anyway, but yeah, I've never been. But Laura, your mom, is the biggest fan I know. Like, she could have her own Disney store and still, like, there'd be Disney stuff she'd want.
If I had my own Disney store, literally.
Well, I meant, like, you could have everything in that the Disney stores used to have, like, all scattered around the house, and you'd be still like, there's this coffee cup with, the Enchanted Girls on it, I want it, or something.
Yeah, absolutely. You bet. Totally would.
Well, while Walt considered the advice, fate seemed to step in at just the right time. Margaret Winkler, a cartoon distributor from New York, remembered Walt earlier Alice in Cartoon Land pitch. Walt Sims sent some of his footage to her in New York, and she agreed to make 12 Alice shorts at $1,500 a pop.
Nice.
He left to the vacuum business. He left the vacuum business to his brother.
Mm-hmm.
So each Alice short was $1,500.
$1,500, same thing.
Yeah.
I was about to say
A dozen. So basically, that was
$18,000 at a time when $18,000 could get you not just through a year but a couple years.
Yeah.
That was a pretty big windfall to an artist at that point. That was like, you've made it.
That's a pretty good amount of money.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And
even nowadays, still it's a pretty good amount of money, but it's not as good as I bet it was back then.
Well,
I'm absolutely not. But see, that's what gets me about Walt, his ambition. Like, most people would be happy to get a successful cartoon series. There's people who's retired off of having one good, successful cartoon series. And Walt just kept building. Walt didn't know when to stop.
no.
And it was brilliant. It was wonderful. His creativity still lives today. His creativity outlived him. His creativity was so big, it couldn't all be contained in his body. And that's amazing to me.
I don't know why it's so amazing to you, honey. You're the same way.
I don't have his success rate. I wish I did.
That is true.
Okay. Well, is that already the third fact?
I think so. I think that was the third fact. Felt like the third fact.
Girls, it was the third fact.
You're just rocking and rolling, little one.
I am speaking at the speed rate of 20 miles per hour.
Something like that.
Walt had a private gateway on Main Street, USA.
Is that where his light is?
Maybe. I might be able to find that in this.
Well, I was asking Laura.
Yeah, there. I want to say it's there in the firehouse. I may be wrong about that.
Okay.
You will see in the back.
Anyway,
That's
yes,
what
go.
my brain tells me.
As Disneyland was being built in California, Walt wanted his own private apartment hidden from the rest of the park. He built a small apartment measuring no more than 500 square feet on the second floor of the fire station on Main Street, USA.
Look at me.
You're so smart, baby.
I don't know about that.
The day Disneyland opened, Walt watched from his apartment window as fans rushed through the gates. Mouseketeer Sharon Baird recalls of the joyous occasion. On the opening day of Disneyland, we Mouseketeers were in Walt Disney's private apartment above the Main Street fire station when the gates of the park opened for the first time. I was standing next to him at the window, watching the guests come pouring through the gates. When I had looked up at him, he had his hands behind his back, a grin from ear to ear. And I could see a lump in his throat and a tear streaming down his cheek. He had realized his dream. He had realized his dream. I was only 12 years old at the time, so it didn't mean as much to me then. But as the years go by, that image of him becomes more and more endearing.
Aww.
What is this?
Yeah. Yep.
Yep, been there.
To this day, nearly 70 years later, the apartment remains almost exactly the same. Now, a light is always kept near the window to symbolize that Walt Disney's spirit remains in the place where he created magic. We're not crying, you are. I'm not crying.
Almost.
I'm almost crying. I'm almost crying.
The one that gets me is they did have that, and so when they started building Walt Disney World as part of the castle, they placed in the top of Cinderella's castle a hidden penthouse apartment suite that was supposed to be for the Disney family to stay in on the grounds in the middle of Walt Disney.
So sad.
Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Fact number 5.
Mm-hmm.
Walt Disney holds the record for most Academy Awards.
Cool.
Walt Disney holds the record for most individual Oscar wins, 22, and nominations, 59.
Yeah, that's a lot. There are actors that would kill to have that kind of record.
Um,
Boy, I'm impressed.
his History reported in 1932 at the 5th Academy Award ceremony. He earned his
induction?
A-U-G-U-R-A. Inaugural award. In the best short subject cartoon category for Flowers and Trees, which he used the new 3-strip Technicolor process. Disney went on to win the same category at the next 7 Oscar ceremonies. He scored one of the Best Picture nomination for 1964's Mary Poppins, but lost to My Fair Lady. Mary Poppins did.
Oh.
Lost to My Fair Lady.
Oh.
Did, however, rack up wins in 5 other Oscar categories, including leading actress, given to Julie Andrews.
Yes, I miss her.
Disney also received 4 honorary Oscars, including one in 1932 for creating Mickey Mouse, another in 1939 for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, a third in 1942 for Fantasia, and its contribution to sound and design.
Yep.
Yeah, Fantasia's amazing. I still love watching it. And they did not a sequel, but kind of.
Yeah, it was a follow-up, Fantasia 2000.
Yeah, I like that too. I don't like it as much, but I like it. Definitely impressive work.
And before we say anything else, just to wrap this up, this is from everythinggp.com, and it's by Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Awesome. Yeah,
for creating this.
I'm a huge fan of Disney the man as much as his creations, but man, there's so much iconic stuff has come out of the Disney studios, and say what you will, I love the fact that Disney's still with us, and I love what they make. So there we go. I am pro Disney. I'm passionately pro Disney, and I'm okay with them owning Marvel. So I'm passionate about that too. Which, how could that's our family? Disney and Marvel together?
Yeah.
That's our family.
Yep.
One of my favorite things from Disney it has to be actually Owl House or maybe Amphibia.
I like Owl House, but again, Wendy Malick. I'm a huge Wendy Malick fan. So there we go. Wendy Malick's awesome.
That one was actually pretty good. That one was pretty
not
good.
Too bad.
Yeah, that one wasn't bad.
Yeah, I have a feeling he's going to start commenting on a lot of stuff this episode.
Apparently. We should probably stop encouraging him, Crystal.
Let's not get copyrighted, Tad. Now we wouldn't want to do that, would we?
Mr. Mouse will say what he wants. Okay, anyway.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, boy. Okay.
Very well said.
Before we dig into Black Eyed Kids, let's talk a little bit about Brian Bethel. Brian Bethel is...
Start digging a grave for these nasty monsters.
That too.
Well, Brian Bethel is a writer for a paper in Texas. I am connected to him on Facebook. I've been friends with him actually ever since he appeared on Astonishing Legends. Hey, Forrest. Hey, Scott. How are you?
Hi.
But yeah, I followed him on Twitter ever since then. And the thing is, his posts are really down to earth. People give him because he's the first one. He reported the first Black Eyed Kids in the 90s. he gets a lot of guff like, oh, well, he was just trying to make himself famous, or he was just trying to build himself up as an author. But it sort of did the opposite. People are like, oh, you're the guy that did the Black Eyed Kids. Like it sort of follows around as a negative rather than a positive.
Yeah.
And so a lot of
it's more of an infamy as opposed to a famous kind of thing.
Right. And the thing is that if you listen to people who don't know him talk, it sounds like he's this scheming guy that's always going on about paranormal stuff. He's done almost zero posts about anything paranormal. His story is amazing. It happened in the 90s. He's a writer for a Texas newspaper, and he's very down to earth. In fact, the only thing he's posted about the paranormal that was that anything paranormal, he's made 2 posts. One, the first, and this is just since I know him in the 90s, he might have made others since, but here's the 2. The first was he mentioned that he gets invited to, on Facebook, he mentioned that he gets invited to a lot of ghost hunts. He gets invited to accompany a lot of paranormal investigators. And he wishes more of them were serious and in search of evidence and willing to report the truth, whatever that may be, as opposed to the ones running around willy-nilly, scaring themselves and creating evidence, whether they mean to or not.
I mean, that's fair enough when you're not taking things seriously.
So
you can miss a lot of things.
So that post was almost not even paranormal. He's talking about the groups that invite him out to these ghost hunts. And basically what he's saying is most of these groups aren't serious and are running around and scaring themselves. And by scaring themselves, they're creating evidence that doesn't really exist. And so they're adding a false note to whatever they're investigating. That was kind of his point. And that's fine. There's almost nothing paranormal to that. It's just an observation about how they conduct themselves while they do this. The only other thing I've ever seen him post that was at all supernatural was he posted about, because he reported it in the 90s, he gets reached out to a lot by people who have seen Black Eyed Kids. And he's like, it's kind of odd, but in the past 6 months, he sort of listed off these people, just not long stories, but just like a guy who saw them in a parking lot, and a guy who had them at his home. You know, it's just a list of people who'd reached out to him, kind of. So we can do away with the idea that he is this paranormal loving goon. He's connected to... Yeah. Well, I'm saying we here in the family plot, we can do away with this idea. We don't have to consider it because we know that he's not that guy. He's made far more posts about things he wants to write about or things he's seen or even important political things that were local to him. So he's a reporter. He does a good job reporting. And the idea that he's this weird paranormal, icon couldn't be further from the truth. And he doesn't spend much time on it. Now, here's the story. It goes like this. It was 1995, and Brian was going to pay his internet bill. Back in those days, internet, cable wasn't, for the most part, providing internet yet, so you had to go through, I'm trying to remember, Southwestern Bell maybe had...
like ISP.
Yeah. And I can't even remember, AOL kind of...
AOL was an ISP, Netscape.
Netscape was another one,
One. Net Zero was one. They did have the free, but then they also had one that you paid for, kind of like. But yeah, those kinds of. Then there were more that kind of were flash in the pans and fizzled out. But it wasn't big like it is now. You couldn't get it through every major cable provider and every satellite provider like we do now.
Right. And his internet service provider that they're building. Now, this was late at night. He was just going to write a check and put it through their mail slot.
Yes, Because keep in mind, this was really before we had debit cards that everyone had if you didn't have a credit card. And even when you did, you couldn't necessarily make those credit card payments over the phone to everybody.
Right. So this was 95, and he was going to pay his internet bill. He was parked in front of the business and writing a check, but the business was across the street from the Westwood Theater, and he began to fill out the check he was going to pay his bill with, and his intention was to leave it in their night deposit slot. It was at this point, while he was still sitting in his car with the doors locked, that he was approached by two kids from the theater. Two boys, roughly 9 and 12 at a guess, it's not like he asked them their ages, stood there. Their older boy had rapped on his window. They explained that they had forgotten their money, and so they couldn't get into the theater. They asked him to give them a ride back to their place so they could get their money and then get them back to the theater so they could see a movie. Specifically, they were going to see Mortal Kombat, so they said. Now, like I said, this was late. It was right around 10. It was actually after 10, not by a lot, but it was. So the theater was still open, but the last film had started. The last showtime for their movies had started. So there were still people in there and lights on, but the business was really at the point where movie theaters they shut down during that last film mostly. It's amazing. If you go in for the last movie, you'll go into a business that's packed with people. When you come out, it's almost dark. There's just a few people left vacuuming and doing simple stuff, really just waiting for everybody to leave.
It's almost creepy.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. That is definitely a surreal situation. You're not wrong, for sure.
So he was a bit concerned that there was any way he could get these kids home to get their money and get them back to the theater in time for them to get a seat in the movie. Because about 15 minutes after a movie starts, maybe 10, they stop selling tickets for it. You can, if you get there at 7:05 for a 7 o'clock movie, they'll still sell you a ticket. If you get there at 7:20, they won't. Especially with that last movie of the night. So he was concerned that he could get them back in time that they could see the movie. But more importantly, while these kids were standing there, he began to get scared. He couldn't explain it. He didn't understand it. He was actually almost shaking in terror. And the boys were begging him by this point, saying things like, "Please, mister, we don't live that far away." The younger one said, "We don't have a gun." It was then Brian noticed several things. One, the kids had eyes that were solid black. No pupil, no iris, just black, right? Two, he was filled with fear, but there wasn't any reason up to that point that he should have been. It's two kids asking him to do something. Why is he scared? He doesn't know. Before he could... And the other thing, he realized his hand was moving to the door lock. So he stopped himself. He apologized to the kids. He said he couldn't do it, and he had to go. He put down his checkbook, his pen. He decided he would come back in the morning, whatever. He just wasn't going to be there at that point. So he had to go. But before he could drive away, the older boy pounded on the window and said, "You have to let us in. We can't get in your car unless you invite us." Brian drove away at that point. When he looked behind him, the boys seemed to have simply vanished.
Yep. Creepy.
So,
we are already 3 feet deep in this whole drag. Digging.
That was 95. And that's probably the most famous Black-Eyed Kid story, but there are others, and lots of others. And I've collected a handful. This time I resisted the impulse to go to Reddit for any of these. Because there's tons of stories on Reddit. I tried to stick to stories that sounded a bit more believable.
So proud of you on that one, babe.
So, our next story, our protagonist is a guy who chose to remain anonymous. He had pulled over during a long drive on a remote road in Utah near Salt Lake City. He woke up to see two kids, a boy and a girl, wearing what he described as odd clothes and having what he referred to as bowl haircuts. Now, Krysta, do you know what a bowl haircut is? Okay.
I've seen them before. It's called the internet, and I've also, some people look good in it. I just don't prefer it.
Yeah, well, the idea of a bowl cut, for anybody out there that doesn't know, is it looks like someone put a bowl on top of someone's head and cut off all the hair they could see that the bowl wasn't covering, which results in kind of an odd-looking hairstyle if you've never seen it.
But they children of the damned.
Yeah. Anyway, they call it a bowl cut, and so these kids had these bowl cuts. So he thought it was kind of odd anyway. Now, he was so shocked by their appearance in this remote area that he felt compelled to roll down the window and ask if they were all right or if they needed help. The boy answered with a jaunty, "Yes, please." And as soon as he said it, and while he was asking the driver if he could take them into town, it was at that point the driver was overwhelmed with fear. Looking up, he noticed the children had void black eyes. He tried to roll up the window, but his hand could barely move. And these kids were kind of smiling and giggling at him like they knew the problem he was having rolling up the window. Suddenly, the boy smiled, and the guy swore his teeth looked metallic. So, at that point, seeing those metallic teeth kind of broke the spell for him, and he started to roll up the window. Well, at that point, the boy rushed to the window, and the guy was so unnerved by it that he kind of caught him with one hand and pushed him back hard enough the boy kind of toppled on his butt. He finished rolling up the window. The boy stood up. They were both staring at him, just evil stares, as evil as you can get with solid black eyes, which to me seems pretty evil. He started the car and he drove off. When he got going and looked behind him, children were nowhere to be seen. Now, that metallic teeth thing, that kind of freaks me out a bit because
Reminds me of critters.
It does remind me of critters a little bit, but you know what else it reminds me of?
Nope.
When Brian Bethel was on Astonishing Legends, they asked him if he'd had any paranormal experiences before. And he said the closest he'd come was having a very odd dream. Now, I don't want to get into it too much because he said this on Astonishing Legends, but long story short, basically he woke up in the middle of the night staying with his grandparents' house. Now, when he was at his grandparents', he slept in their bed. Well, their TV was on, and it was a show with all these Muppets, but they had human teeth. Like he remembers that. And they kept trying to get him to come to the television. And finally, he just went into the front room and sat in his grandfather's recliner. Well, as soon as he sat down, now back in the day when this happened, when TVs would come on, a lot of times there'd be like a white dot before it did. Like you'd press power, there'd be this white dot, and then the screen would sort of come up after that. But that white dot told you there was power to the TV and it was coming on. Well, as he's sitting there, he sees that white dot and he screams, and that's when he woke himself up. So that metallic teeth and the human teeth thing, They sort of connect for me. I don't know. I'm not going to come back to that and make some weird prediction based off of it. It just seems odd to me that teeth are involved in both these guys' lives at different points. And strange teeth. So let's go to England. Yeah? You want to go to England?
Sure, absolutely. Love a little trip over the pond, as they say. I think that's what they say, right?
Right. We're going to go to Cannock Chase. Now, Cannock Chase, years ago, had a serial killer in it. And other than that, it's a pretty, it's a pretty normal place other than that. Now, British paranormal investigator Lee Brickley tells of a story that happened in Cannock Chase. According to him, a woman and her daughter were having a picnic in a local park. As they're eating, they hear the sound of a girl screaming and ran for the sound, as you would.
Maybe not after this show.
They get to where they thought the screams were coming from, but they didn't see anybody. Well, they turn around, and there's a young girl behind them, and she's covering her eyes. Like she's doing this. Those of you who can't see, I've got my hands over my eyes. I'm sorry, Apollo. I put my hands over my eyes, and he got
not a fan.
Not a fan of me putting my hands over my eyes or moving my arms at all. I'm interrupting his nap, and he's not happy with me.
Right.
Exactly.
How dare you, Papa?
Right. So, the mother asked the girl if she was the source of the scream and if she needed help. The girl at that point lowered her hands, revealing her solid, coal black eyes. Mom and daughter ran screaming for their car, leaving the remains of their picnic behind.
Well, that would be...
So, Krysta, let's say you're home alone, right? Knock on the door. You go to the door, and it's a couple of kids with black eyes, and they want to use the phone. They want to come in and use the phone. You let them in? No?
No.
No?
First of all, way too many children. I already have my little sister. So no. I have my own things to deal with at home. No. Second of all, if there are little kids standing with black eyes standing outside my door, I'm gonna knock them out with a bat. I don't care.
You're called the police.
Well, first, let's take a moment for a word from our sponsors. And when we come back, we have sponsors.
All right.
And when we come back, we'll talk about what might happen when one lets them in because someone did. All that when we come back after a word from our sponsors. Hey, hon, how do you feel? There we go. So, we were talking about letting them in.
Yeah, and I said that's something I wouldn't do.
And most people don't. But this tale comes to us from a housewife who currently resides in Arizona. Her husband one night was up late. She had gone to bed much earlier in the evening. Her husband heard the doorbell ring and went to answer. The family dog was quite agitated and barked quite a bit before the husband opened the door. As soon as he opened the door, the dog put her tail firmly between her legs and slunk away to the bedroom. There were two children, an older girl in a Victorian-style dress and a young boy wearing a hoodie and jeans. They claimed that they had gotten lost and needed to use the phone to call their parents. He immediately noticed a massive headache as he allowed the children in the house to use the phone. He walked them to the house phone, allowed them to make the call, feeling worse the longer the children they were around. It was around this point he noticed the children's solid black eyes. And he believes the children were amused it took him a while to notice. When their parents showed up, two men dressed in black suits with a metallic sheen, both wearing sunglasses, what does that description sound reminiscent of?
Mini black.
There we go. That's what I noticed. The children left. Her husband made it back into the house just in time to collapse. The wife found her husband sometime later and helped him to bed. The next day, they made an emergency appointment to take her husband to her physician, and for the next several years, the man suffered from numerous mystery ailments before he finally passed some years later.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you this much. One thing that I do a lot is whenever I'm talking to someone, I'll, literally look into their eyes the whole freaking time I'm talking to them. So, the first thing that would draw attention to me is their eyes, because when I'm meeting someone, I'm just like, yeah, let's make sure your eyes don't move.
So, there are a certain number of people that are dismissive of the black-eyed kid experience. They basically say it's creepypasta, it's like Slender Man, it doesn't exist, it's not real. There are no such thing as black-eyed kids. But let me tell you, this is not a new idea. A lot of people think it is, but it isn't. First of all, according to some folklore experts, the Irish hill fairies were often described as having solid black eyes. In fact, in the Time, Life, Fairies, and Elves book that I have, it specifically mentions a story from Ireland where the fairies have coal black eyes. Now, Native Americans living near Ohio, I apologize for not knowing what tribe this is off the top of my head, believed in black-eyed spirits and considered them evil and otherworldly. In fact, these Native Americans said that if they encountered someone with black eyes,
At least, just off the top of my head, I can think of a lot of, demons and stuff that are represented by a figure with completely black eyes, just in, Hollywood movies and stuff. So, obviously, this isn't a new idea. Maybe them taking the form of children and seeking out people who are alone may be not as thought of, but yeah.
Also, many traditions refer to fetches, and fetches are really an Irish idea. They're supernatural or apparitional copies of living beings as having black eyes. And they're called fetches because for a while it was believed they were coming to fetch the person they looked like soul. So they called them fetches. But they're recorded as having black eyes.
Gotcha.
And in fact, there's a movie, Let Me In, or Let the Right One In, I'm not sure which is about black-eyed kids.
Are you trying to say that, these demons that are literally your passed away similar, your passed away doppelganger that is trying to come and get you?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that to anybody who thinks, well, this black-eyed kid is a new idea. It's not a new idea. It's been around for hundreds of years. That's all I'm saying. I wouldn't have a clue as to black-eyed kids, what they are, other than an extrusion of something other dimensional into our dimension. And there's a lot I haven't gone into because I couldn't find the research to back it up. But like Astonishing Legends, who did 3 or 4 hours on black-eyed kids, did find, and it's like with them, one of the things they talked about was someone coming to the, and mind you, they got a lot of their stories from their listeners. So, but one set of black-eyed kids asked to use someone's telegraph machine. They're often in clothes that don't fit the time period. It's like...
Well, yeah, that girl and the boy in the story of the guy who let them in. The girl was in a Victorian era dress.
Right. So it's like I said, I just think it's an extrusion into our world of something that doesn't normally live here. And that for whatever reason, it has to get permission to get entry, which is a very old idea. I mean, supposedly vampires couldn't enter your house if you didn't invite them.
Right.
So, yeah. And to add to this, and I've told this story on other podcasts, I don't think I've told it on ours. I actually had an encounter with black-eyed kids. Mm-hmm. So this happened around 2003 or thereabouts. I was doing stand-up comedy and found myself in the tiny city of Grand Junction, Colorado. And I say it's a tiny city because it's a tiny city. It's not a small town. It had a mall. I don't know if it still does. I haven't been there in years. And that's where the show was. That was an English-style pub located in a mall. In fact, we had to be in a very specific area because the mall didn't want to hear the comedy. So we had to be in like a weird part of the restaurant where like we were kind of cut off so the noise didn't get out from the... I specifically remember that. So, and they cautioned us on language just because the mall itself didn't want us to be dirty. But like the place was pretty cool. And so I was there doing a one-nighter, which if you're not familiar with stand-up comedy, there are gigs at comedy club that will take up your week. Like if you're booked at a comedy club, usually it's Wednesday through Saturday at least. Some clubs are Wednesday through Sunday. But you're there all week, for the most part, minus Monday and Tuesday, which most clubs are dark Monday and Tuesday because if you're not in LA or one of the huge cities, it's hard to get an audience to watch comedy on a Monday or Tuesday night. Right. And those cities don't have traditional comedy clubs in that it's 3 acts and whatever. Like, not that there's anything wrong with but Comedy Store has multiple comedy stages. There could be an open mic on one. There could be an open mic of solid performers on another. And there could be one guy doing an hour show on another, just working on his HBO special or whatever. So, but these were not these week-long shows. This was one of a string of one-nighters. So like Wednesday, you're in Montana. You're in Helena, Montana. Thursday, you're in Butte. You don't have a gig on Friday, but Saturday they have you in Kalispell, for example. So that's what they do with one-nighters. You string 2 or 3 of them together to make your week work. So this was an un-nighter, and the show was in an English-style pub located in a shopping mall, as I said. Mm-hmm. The gig had started around 8, so by the time I left and was ready to head back to my hotel, it was a little after 10 p.m. Now, I feel like it's important that I say... everybody knows I'm a big fan of my brownies at night. Everybody knows that at one point in my life, I was not a dedicated pot smoker, but I had my moments, but I never traveled with it. You're just asking for trouble. You're just asking for trouble. And so I was not in any way chemically altered. I didn't drink because I had been diagnosed with diabetes at that point. So I didn't drink in almost at all. If I've had 10 drinks, 10, since I was diagnosed back in 2001, I would say that's more than I can remember. Yeah. So I wasn't drunk. I was not high. I was not on any other substance. I had not been given anything because sometimes cool people will lay a bud on you or a joint on you or whatever, and that you can take back to the hotel. But nobody had done that. So I had just made my way to my car. I was looking forward to putting my merch away because at the time I sold CDs and T-shirts, and driving back to the hotel, having pizza delivered because they had a Domino's, and Domino's is like the only pizza place in some parts of America, and it's bad pizza, but
I like Domino's. Don't pick on my Domino's. I enjoy
Don't
Domino's.
offend the people who likes the Domino's pizza. Some of their pizza is good. Maybe you just haven't found your thing that you like.
Well, okay. I will say I'm not the world's biggest fan of Domino's pizza, but if you can't get anything else, Domino's is just fine. Wow, a spammer is calling while we're on the thing. That's funny. All right, moving on. So, as I was saying, I was not in any way altered at that point. I was loading the box, because it was a big cardboard box that had my T-shirts and CDs, into the trunk when I was approached by two boys, both in hoodies, which, considering there was snow on the ground, that seemed a little light to me, like they should have been wearing heavier clothes. They were dressed for like a chilly summer night, not like a place where there was snow on the ground, and big drifts of snow from where a snowstorm had happened recently. And you know how in malls they used to like just take a forklift and just push these giant piles?
They still do.
Yeah, well, there were these giant piles of snow all over the place. So to me, it seemed what they were wearing was a little light. But having kids myself, I know sometimes they don't pay attention to things like how cold the weather is in their clothing choices.
Don't look at me.
Krysta, you gave me a dress and a long sleeve shirt for Lexi yesterday.
I don't know.
It's like outfits for two different seasons. And while we do live in Kansas City, and in a day both of those things might be appropriate.
It's also June. And hot as 80 outside. Just saying.
So they told me that they had been in the theater and that their ride home hadn't shown up. Now, as soon as I saw these kids, I felt uncomfortable and I felt scared. And when Adam and Matt read this story on their show, because I sent it to them as part of their listener thing they did around Christmas, and they read it. Thank you, Matt and Adam. But when they read it, Matt and Adam both pointed out, dude, it was after 10. If you see Michael, my kid won't be out after 10. And Matt was like, yeah, my kids won't be out after 10 either. So you should have just left. Which maybe I should have, but like I said, I was scared, I was uncomfortable, and I have these kids in front of me telling me that their ride hadn't shown up and they need a ride home. Now, I'm a dad, so my first instinct is help these kids, but I'm also scared to death, and I can't really figure out why. And anyone who knows me knows putting me in a situation where I'm frustrated like that is a great way to get me mad. Because I don't deal well with that sort of frustration. And I told them, but the first thing I said was, I'm not from the area, which I wasn't, and I wouldn't be able to find their house. The younger one said they didn't live far, and I slammed the trunk at that point, and I was getting in the door. The younger one was like, they didn't live far away. And I'm like, yeah, I still don't know the area. And I don't want to be driving around with kids that aren't mine in a place I'm not familiar with. So I have to say no. And so at that point, I'm in the driver's seat. I'm shutting that door. And at that point, they're begging me, and they're really pushy. Like, I've been with sales guys that weren't as pushy. You remember that sales guy in Vegas that tried to get... These guys were pushier than that, and he was pretty pushy.
He was very pushy.
So, it was right around then that I noticed their eyes. Solid black. And I told them again, I was from out of town and absolutely could not help. The young one screeched at me to give them a ride, but I backed out of the spot, pointed my car towards the road that led out of the mall, and took off. Looking behind me, the boys had vanished. To this day, I think about that and my heart pounds.
Your heart pounding?
even now, just talking about, I can't. Part of it is my brain keeps trying to tell me there's a rational explanation. Like, the mall, I remember, had those arc sodium lights, those kind of yellow-orange lights. And my brain's like, well, maybe under arc sodium lights, eyes can look black. But that doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound, it doesn't fit.
Answer me this riddle.
Matt Riddle?
Actual riddle.
Oh, okay. Matt Riddle?
No.
Okay.
When you were in the mall doing stand-up, were you looking around?
No.
No?
I mean, I was looking around at the crowd, but beyond going to the one place, that the place that had the show.
No, I meant looking at the crowd.
Yeah, I was looking at the crowd, but I always looked at the crowd.
Did any of their eyes seem black?
No. But they weren't out in the parking lot either. That was in the club.
No, but still, yellow light on any color of eye would not make them look whole black, as you've been explaining things.
So, yeah, well, long story short, it still creeps me out. I still, to this day, it triggers me because part of me wonders if they were, like, maybe I got the situation wrong and they were normal kids and I should have just taken them home. But then the other part of me is like, you should not have let those kids anywhere near you. And I didn't. And I'm okay, and I hope if they're real kids, they're okay. But I don't think they are.
Yeah. If they vanished, no. But what I realized was the guy at the beginning.
Brian Bethel?
Yep, and you both had a very, very dissimilar experience.
Yeah,
they were talking about
most
the
of them
theaters
seem similar. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, I've got to say, most of the stories that I have heard are them knocking on people's doors wanting to come in and use the phone. But the only stories like that I could find were on Reddit. And I didn't want it to, because I just don't, there's no curation to Reddit. You know, there's no
evidence that it happened.
Well, it's just there's nobody on Reddit to go, this seems real, this seems like hokey, I'm going to need more details. You know, it's that, and I guess that's what why I didn't want to use it for this show, because I'm a believer. Mm-hmm. I have seen what I've seen. I don't care if you believe me or not, I believe. And black-eyed kids is a far more common phenomenon with them knocking on your door and asking to use the telephone. But that wasn't the experience I had. It wasn't the experience Brian Bethel had. Yeah. And if I remember right, and I don't know if I do, but some of the stories that Scott and Forrest shared on their episode on Black-Eyed Kids predated Brian's story.
Right.
Just people hadn't told it because they thought people would tell them they're crazy. And nobody wants to be told they're crazy.
Even crazy people.
Well, okay, to be fair, at this point, going someplace for a 72-hour hold seems like it might be a vacation opportunity.
I mean, yeah, but that's, I think, most parents, really. Let's get this straight. Some of us actually embrace our crazy. We try to, because I am crazy. And also, let me establish that there is a difference between being crazy, which we are, and being mentally ill, which is a thing that I am too. But being mentally ill is something that's established. Being crazy just can come and go.
Very cool. So that is our episode on Black-Eyed Kids. Any final thoughts?
I do.
Okay.
Go for it, baby.
Yeah, I've been holding stuff in. It really all comes to a point of whether you believe. And I know that I do. Because us as people, there are so many people in this world, and we have not discovered every single person. I'm not saying the state should go on crazy mode and start watching everyone through cameras through their houses. But what I'm saying is, some people actually might be otherworldly beings, and the reason why we don't really see black-eyed kids in most places is because the majority of people, they either, I know a lot of introverts will look at the ground when they're walking, or I know some extroverts won't look at people's eyes, which could actually be one of the contributions of why we don't see otherworldly creatures when we're walking on the street all together in a whole bunch. You know when you see a very, very busy street and there's like people crowding everywhere, like Japan? It could be otherworldly creatures could be in Japan or wherever we live, or it could be there. When we are walking around, we do not know everyone we talk to. An otherworldly creature can be roaming around, which is why we have the Men in Black. They are like the otherworldly police, and they save humans from what they don't know is around.
Okay.
Interesting. I like that idea.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
One of the things that I want to remind people, if you think I'm going crazy, I am. I have my lovely mother who is also crazy, and my lovely father who is also crazy. All together, they made me, and I am now completely insane. But I mean that in a good way. I'm a good kid. I do good things. I just am crazy. Just a little crazy. And I can't confirm, nor deny that any of this is truthful. I just think, for me, it all lines up. So I just kind of go, why not? It's fun making little stories up, even if they're not true. It could be true.
And you, my love?
I think I've already said everything.
Fair enough. My final thought is actually going to be a story I didn't include, and my reason for not including it is that I found it on Reddit, but where I found it on Reddit made it weird. Where I found it on Reddit was in a subgroup for shut-ins, for people who have agoraphobia, their fear of open spaces, so they rarely leave their house. And this boy of 12, maybe a little older, he had gotten home from school, he had run into his house, and he had shut the door. Now, he doesn't answer the door. He doesn't want to encounter people he doesn't know. So he hears a knock on the door. He looks outside. It's a girl. And she says, "I need to come in." Now, he hasn't said anything. He hasn't answered the door. He's looking through the peephole, right? He doesn't say anything to her. He goes away. He comes back, looks out the door. She's still standing there. And she says, "I need to come in again." Now, mind you, she is not looking up. She is looking down at her feet. He goes into his room. He hides there for the better part of an hour. He comes back out, looks. She's no longer in front of the door. She is sitting on the fence, staring at the door, smiling, looking directly at him, he feels like, with these coal black eyes.
Yeah, this is
why we don't let random strangers in.
So I almost included that one. I just chose not to because I was like, no Reddit, none. But that one is probably the most chilling one I've read. Because that implied, A, she knew he was there because he wasn't answering the door. He was just looking through the keyhole. Now, I suppose...
She wasn't even looking up.
Yeah, she wasn't. She was looking down at her feet. Now, I suppose looking through a keyhole, there's some keyholes that are designed that people go, aha, it's darker now or whatever, so there's... But still, it's kind of creepy.
It's definitely creepy.
Well, once again, thank you for listening to this, our 100th episode. We are so glad to have you here. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Thanks to Bill Barrett. He does our theme music. If you need music for anything, Bill's your guy. And that's Bill Barrett, and I'll spell that for you, BEHRENDT at sbcglobal.net. He can handle all your musical needs. Everything from playing music at a wedding to coming up with original music.
Yes.
Also, thanks to Paige Elmore of Reverie True Crime, who did our logo art, the ice cream cone skull. That is Paige Elmore. Thank you, Paige.
Thank you, Paige.
Aaron Gnert from the Big Dumb Fun Show, who continues to promote us locally. Thank you, Aaron. Join our Facebook group. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok. Join us next week for part 2 of our 100 episode celebration, the party episode.
Ooh,
Are we actually going to have a party?
we should sit here and eat ice cream and talk about our feelings. No, that's therapy session. Never mind.
Yeah, maybe we could do that for like 115.
Yes, we will have some kind of a party.
Do I get a hat?
Yes, you may have a hat.
Yay!
All right.
I have a hat. You may have a hat. You may have a hat. We all can have hats.
All right. Sounds good.
If you are old enough, get your wine and get your popcorn and start eating.
Yes. So, thank you again. Bye.
Bye.
Don't let in any black-eyed kids. Bye.
Oh.